The geographic area of the Native American Northeast extends from the province of Quebec in modern-day Canada through the Ohio River Valley and down to the North Carolina coast. The northeastern landscape is dominated by the Appalachian Mountains, which include rolling hills and prominent peaks. Native Americans settled extensively in this area, especially during the Hopewellian period from 200 BCE to 500 CE. Due to the temperate climate, accessible waterways, and good farming conditions. The most notable groups in this area include the Algonquians, Iroquois, Susquehannocks, Mohicans, and Hurons. The Hopewellian period included the cultural shift from hunting and gathering to budding agricultural systems. Some historians estimate that Native Americans were farming squash in Illinois as early as 5000 BCE. Corn farming spread through trading networks to the Ohio River Valley from the southwest by 350 BCE. They soon began to plant and grow beans. Together, the corn, squash, and beans became known as the Sacred Three Sisters, a term coined by the Iroquois people. According to the Iroquois, the three crops would only thrive if planted close together. Algonquians retained hunting and gathering as a source of food while beginning to farm. Women would gather berries and cultivate the cornfields, while men would hunt and occasionally aid in farming. Northeastern indigenous people living near rivers would fish salmon and collect shellfish as well. With an abundance of food, Iroquois and Hurons made intricate pottery to store the surplus. They also wove baskets to aid in the farming process. All three sisters quickly became cash crops, a crop in high demand by Native Americans on the plains and west coast who were eager to trade. They received large shells, pearls, copper, and silver in return for the foods. Groups within the region would trade food and commodities with other northeastern peoples, depending on their area's niche good. For example, the Susquehannocks of Pennsylvania traded wampum beads for nets and furs from the Hurons of the Great Lakes region. Indigenous people in the Northeast generally lived in villages with a few hundred residents. Hochelaga, modern-day Montreal, was inhabited by several thousand people and surrounded by extensive cornfields. In agricultural Hopewellian societies, men planted and harvested, while women worked in the home, took care of the children, and processed the crops. Hopewellian culture began the tradition of mound building, which would extend down to the southeast into the next century. Throughout the Ohio River Valley, Native Americans built mounds in the earth, which may have served burial and ceremonial purposes. Large mounds and animal-shaped earthworks still exist throughout this area today. As the Northeast became more agricultural, the region became more urbanized. Although we consider agricultural areas less densely populated today, farming required people to live together in fortified villages to protect their harvests. Many indigenous people in the Northeast lived in longhouses, dwellings up to 100 feet in length. Since Algonquians farmed while also maintaining hunting and fishing, they commuted from less permanent villages of wigwams. But as certain groups, like the Iroquois, began having farming and thereby trading success, intertribal violence intensified. Trade competition led to ongoing conflict between the Iroquois and Algonquians. In hopes of ending intertribal conflict, the Mohawks, Oneidas, Onondagas, Cayugas, and Senecas established the Iroquois League, or the Great League of Peace, between 1100 and 1400 CE. During this time period, the Iroquoians met for about a year to devise a solution to this cyclic pattern of violence and retribution between tribes. The Iroquois League devised a system in which each member group could maintain a level of autonomy over local affairs, but the League would unite over trade policies and diplomacy issues. The Iroquois League put forth republican principles and a dual system of federalism, or balancing local and national powers, for the first time in North America. Therefore, many historians argue that the Iroquois League was really the first American democracy, established at least 400 years earlier than the U.S. Constitution of 1787. The southeastern tribes stretched down the Mississippi River and into the area surrounding the Gulf of Mexico, through some of the most fertile lands in North America. Native Americans were the first to take advantage of such promising agricultural conditions. The prominent Native American groups in this area were known as the Five Civilized Tribes: the Cherokees, Choctaws, Chickasaws, Creeks, and Seminoles. Mississippian culture, dominant from about 1000 CE onward, developed from the beginnings of farming in Hopewellian culture, which dominated a few centuries before in the Northeast. The Mississippian peoples were excellent farmers. Notably, Cherokee women planted and harvested crops, including beans, squash, corn, tobacco, and sunflowers. They supplemented their diets with acorns, nuts, seeds, and fruits. Since they did not use any fertilizer, they had to burn the fields and create new ones every season. This required immense amounts of time and labor, but ultimately led to large crop yields. While they had great farming success, southeastern Native Americans also continued to hunt and fish. They hunted deer with bows and arrows and fished in rivers and in the Gulf of Mexico for protein. In southern Florida, Calusa people developed complex fishing and trapping systems for clams, mussels, and saltwater fish. Mississippians also created intricate pottery and arrow points. They fashioned elaborate serving utensils and dishes for food, as well as weaponry for hunting larger animals. Mississippians continued the mound-building traditions of the Hopewellian people and extended them to the south and west. Mississippian mound societies were larger and more complex than previous communities, indicating unprecedented population growth and wealth. Cahokia, near modern-day St. Louis, was home to an estimated 40,000 Cahokian people, after whom the city was named. It became the major urban trade center along the Mississippi River and remained the largest city ever recorded in North America until Philadelphia surpassed its population numbers 500 years later. Monk's Mound at the center of Cahokia is the largest pre-contact earthwork in modern America, expanding 955 feet in length and 100 feet in height. Cahokia's population declined sharply around 1250, probably due to environmental factors such as overhunting or deforestation. Poverty Point, another mound city, linked large trade networks throughout the Americas. Located in the northern part of modern-day Louisiana, the city provided a place to export stone and clay items on dugout canoes up the Mississippi River. In return, flint and soapstone came to the south from the Ohio River Valley. Historians hypothesize that Poverty Point also had religious significance, indicated by large plazas most likely used for worship. Most people lived in hamlets or villages, which would form political units of under 1,000 people. Seminoles in modern Florida and Georgia constructed villages out of chickees, buildings with thatched roofs and open sides. The agricultural boom of the Mississippian culture concentrated wealth at the top. The Creek people in Georgia practiced slavery, forcing prisoners of war to work their fields. The Southeast Native Americans were the first to organize villages around chiefdoms, in which families were ranked by social status and proximity to the chief himself. Chiefs lived in elaborate wooden structures atop large mounds, indicating their power. Societies often had both peace chiefs and wartime chiefs, with distinct purposes and leadership strengths. Historians know little about the religious practices of the American Indians in the Southeast, yet they agree that the group had a spiritual connection to the land and used the mounds for ceremonies worshiping natural features, including the sun, corn, and water, the elements which sustained them. The Plains region spreads to the east of the Rocky Mountains up to 400 miles across the flat land of the center of the present-day United States. The plains were very sparsely populated until about 1100 CE, when Native American groups including Pawnees, Mandans, Omahas, Wichitas, Cheyennes, and other groups started to inhabit the area. The climate supported limited farming closer to the major waterways, but ultimately became most fruitful for hunting large and small game. Plains Native Americans planted the Three Sisters, beans, squash, and corn, and they arrived from the southwest around 900 CE. Agriculture was most commonly practiced and most fruitful along rivers. Plains inhabitants also harvested plants for medicinal purposes. For example, chokeberries were thought to cure stomach sickness. Women farmed and gathered while men hunted. Hunting became a more dominant practice when a drought struck in the 1300s. Indigenous people hunted large animals as early as 12,000 BCE. They practiced a mix of agriculture and hunting on foot, using large spears with clovis points at the end. Clovis points, sharp points carved out of stone, have been now discovered all across North America. Archaeologists estimate that a spear with a clovis point at the end could kill animals the size of African elephants, corroborating the idea that Native Americans used these 2-centimeter spear points to hunt massive animals like mammoths, buffalo, and bison. Horses did not arrive in North America until 1519, when they were introduced by the Spanish explorer Hernán Cortés. Cortés brought about 600 horses to the region throughout his expeditions. Later, Francisco Vázquez de Coronado and Juan de Oñate would bring more. When horses became widely available in the 1600s, Lakotas and Cheyennes gave up agriculture altogether to become nomadic buffalo hunters. In earlier, more agrarian societies, Native Americans on the plains would set up sedentary bases in earth lodges. Highly agrarian groups like the Wichitas built grass homes near their crops. In the eastern part of the plains, where the Hidatsa and Mandan people cultivated maize, they established trade networks along the Mississippi River. They made bull boats by stretching bison skin over a wooden frame to trade goods along the rivers. They traded elaborate baskets and leather for metals and furs from the Northeast. As Native Americans on the plains became more focused on hunting, they became more nomadic. They constructed teepees, conical tents made out of buffalo skin and wood, shelters that were easy to put up and take down if a band was following a buffalo herd for hunting. Sometimes Native Americans on the plains lived in a combination of nomadic and sedentary settings. They would plant crops and establish villages in the spring, hunt in the summer, harvest their crops in the fall, and hunt in the winter. These hunting agrarian groups were mostly divided at the level of the band. A band could consist of a dozen to a few hundred people who lived, hunted, and traveled together. Often, bands would unite in a village setting to farm or hunt a large herd of bison. Villages usually had fluid populations and little to no political structure. It is nearly impossible to generalize the religious traditions of the Plains region, since every group had its own practices. Rituals often revolved around the sun and nature, with the earth as the mother of all spirits. Cheyennes, for example, performed the sun dance, which forced people to sacrifice something personal for communal benefit. Lakotas believed that certain individuals were blessed to be spiritual leaders or medicine men. Indigenous people on the plains regarded the buffalo and their migration patterns as sacred. With the introduction of horses, plains societies became less egalitarian. The men with the most horses had the most political impact, social status, and economic power. As European colonists arrived, the Sioux in particular began to trade with them. They received guns and horses in exchange for buffalo robes, blankets, and beads. As we close today's lecture, it's important to remember that the story of the Americas did not begin in 1492. For thousands of years before Columbus set foot in the Caribbean, indigenous peoples across the Western Hemisphere had built thriving, complex societies rich in political organization, environmental knowledge, spiritual depth, and cultural achievement. From the monumental cities of the Maya and the Inca to the vast trade networks that linked the Great Lakes to the Gulf Coast, native societies were anything but static. They innovated, adapted, and transformed their landscapes. They developed sustainable agricultural systems, built intricate diplomatic alliances, and preserved knowledge through oral traditions and ritual. This pre-contact history is not a prelude. It is history in its own right, and understanding it is essential if we are to challenge the misconceptions that have long shaped the narratives of colonization and conquest. When Europeans arrived, they did not discover a new world. They entered a world that was already old, sophisticated, and deeply interconnected. As we move forward into our study of contact, colonization, and resistance, let's carry with us this foundational truth. Indigenous civilizations were not primitive, vanishing cultures. They were and remain vital contributors to the human story, shaping the Americas then and continuing to do so today.